Welcome back to Agave Road Trip-in-a-Box. So,
Welcome.
so we're now on to the first round, and the first round is miles apart.
Yes, which it's our experiment of a lot of people talk about this. We rarely use French words in our tasting, but there seems to be this one
Je
that every
suis un grand canard. There, I
yeah,
used some
well,
French words in our tasting.
yeah, I wouldn't characterize that as French. I characterize that as trying to speak French. But
That's
anyways,
fair.
there is this French word that somehow completely revolutionized the world of alcohol, which is terroir. And a lot of it has been said, but a few times we have the chance to actually taste it in a very specific way in agave spirits, right, Lou? Like
Right.
it's hard to say, okay, this is just 10 or 12 miles apart, and I can find these differences if we have almost the same process, the same agave, and similar traditions to approaching this, right?
Yeah, yeah, similar, close enough.
Yeah.
And
So
that's right, and that's the point to this tasting, right? So we've got two agave spirits made from the same agave, tobala, agave potatorum, made by two different young men, right? So you got, and it's funny in both cases. It's not funny. I think maybe it was planned. You have Manuel Ramos in Miahuatlan, and Manuel I think is like 24 or 25, and then over in San Jose Rio Minas, both of these in Oaxaca. You've got Sebastian. I'm gonna butcher this. Aguirre.
Aguilar,
Aguila.
Aguilar.
No, 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 no. You're saying the wrong name.
No, how am I saying Aguilar? Yeah, Sebastian Aguilar.
No, no, no. It's Aguirre.
Ah,
A G
Aguirre,
U I R
Aguirre,
R E.
Aguirre, Sebastian
Aguirre.
Aguirre.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay. So, two different spirits made using the same agave and roughly the same process. So, what's the process for making both of these spirits? And what are the
Well,
similarities? What are the
exactly.
differences? Yeah.
The similarities are they're both being cooked underground in a conical oven in an horno using
Both
wood,
using both using potatorum, both
both
using
using
tobala.
potatorum.
Mhm.
You both using. We are not sure if they're using the same wood though.
No,
Most likely
probably not.
no, they're using either oak or mesquite or mixes of that. Then they are milling both were a taona, if that's correct, Lou.
Yes, both using a stone wheel. In the case of Manuel, it's a stone wheel pulled by two oxen, and in the case of Sebastian, it's pulled by a horse.
Exactly. So that's close enough.
Yeah.
Then they both are open air fermentation without adding anything extra.
Yes.
But in, oh, what are
Don't
they
go
adding?
ahead. No, no. Without adding anything extra, that's correct. But
Extra.
the
But the
vessel is
vessel changes.
the
In
vessel
the case
changes.
of Emmanuel, it's he's using a wood vessel, and they're also something that I realized after looking at the pictures. Emmanuel is using the typical or very common 1,000-liter wood vessel, whereas in the case of Sebastian, he's using plastic containers that
He,
are a
he
lot smaller.
yes, yes, that's absolutely accurate. But he also sometimes ferments in hollowed out logs, and it's hard to tell what he's doing when. I don't even think he's keeping track of it. To him, it's just a vessel is a vessel is a vessel.
Correct. But importance or important difference is the volume that they're fermenting at once or in each vessel. It's a lot smaller in the case of Sebastian than it's in the case of Emmanuel Ramos.
Right.
No?
Okay, and then distillation is being done in wood-fired stills. So that's the same, right?
Yes, but the steels, that's where, as we say in Mexico, the devil is in the details. El diablo está en los detalles. These steels couldn't be more different. In the case of Emmanuel, I think it's the most common still that people, if you're a mezcal geek, oh no, because it has a refresca. We're talking, wow, yeah, this is really interesting. So we're checking, okay, I love this. Can you explain Emmanuel Ramos still? Because
So sure, it's a wood-fired copper pot still, right? And from that standpoint, when Chava said it's like a lot of stills you see in Mexico, he's not wrong. You see a lot of wood-fired copper pot stills, but in at his palenque, his family's palenque in Miahuatlan, something that you will see frequently in that region is this thing called the refrescador or refrescadora,
refrescadera.
refrescadera. Dera?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, something like that.
Refrescadora, refrescadera. There you go. Like it might be.
Sure.
Go.
So normally, what you'll see on the top of this wood-fired copper pot still is just some kind of condenser, a simple condenser, and the booze will leave the still in that condenser. In other words, your alcohol, you're heating your fermented liquid up above, and this is a rough way of saying it, and it's inaccurate, but it's close enough. Above 173 degrees, which is the boiling point of alcohol, below 212 degrees, the boiling point of water. The point being that your alcohol turns into a vapor and floats up. And when it floats up as a gas, as a vapor, right, it's going to hit something that's got some element that makes it cold, usually water. And when it hits that cold element, it's like metal or clay, hits that cold element, that vapor turns back into a liquid and it drips down into some kind of tool that catches it, which is like what you see a lot of in rural Mexico and what you used to see everywhere in the world before people got fancy stills. But they do something that is different in Miahuatlan, and I've seen this in other places, but mainly Miahuatlan and Hula, called this refrescadera, which is sort of like it does that, except that drops down onto a plate, and that plate heats up. And so it does a second distillation within what would be the condenser, but is now a refrescadera.
Yeah, and this will be like the grandpa of the column steel. Basically,
Yeah,
you're making for alcohol to be really hard to travel all the way to the coil, to the condensing coil, and you're restrict you are able to get higher ABV in one pass because of this. And that's basically it. They are, which is very interesting because a lot of people sometimes are wary about the one pass distillation. They think that everything has to be done to be distilled twice to be safe to consume, which is absolutely not true because most of the things we consume in the world are technically one distillation because
right.
they're done in column steel. So let's just think about this as a very rudimentary column steel that somehow these guys decided to use.
Okay, but now compare that to what our friend Sebastian has in San Jose Rio Minas, Chava.
Ooh, Sebastian's is one of my favorite setups in the world. And it is because you can see how plastic and how adaptable the traditions in Oaxaca are when you see his operation. In the case of Sebastian, he I'm pretty sure his community used to only distill in what we consider to be some of the oldest, most ancestral way, which is using clay pots. And the way the clay pot works, exactly how Lou mentioned, you have, but they're also smaller again, and I think
Smaller
scale
than the
is
copper
important.
pots would be.
Yes,
Yeah.
the copper pot is usually 200, 250 liters, whereas the clay pots are usually 40 to 60 liters.
Depending on the length of the women's arms in town.
Well, no, that's yeah, depending how tall the woman that was doing the clay was. That's loose
That's a little
joke.
Fenny joke for you folks. Little Fenny
Indian,
joke.
yeah, go on, Indian joke. But
Anyway, keep going, Java.
yeah,
So,
that's gonna be
so,
really
th-
hard to
so, so they
unpack.
used a clay pot instead of a copper pot for their distillation.
Well,
Smaller.
no. That's the point, though. They used to, and now the pot, the bottom that they use is stainless steel, whereas
Hmm.
now the top, which is where the alcohol condenses,
In
it's
the way that
clay.
that I had described earlier.
Earlier, yeah, it's clay, and this is very interesting because they did. I mean, we have a lot of theories of why they decided to go for the steel bottom, but I think that it's very safe to say that they did it because they're very far away from the town where these clay pots are made, and these clay pots are tremendously fragile. So you break them a lot. Could be out of the heat. Maybe you threw a lot of cold moss in there very fast and the pot was very hot and then it explodes. Maybe you were trying to put a log to make the fire bigger and you hit it with the log and it breaks. There's so many ways to break this,
Yeah.
and you don't want to spend 3 days going to the town to get the clay pot again.
Yeah,
So
this particular tasting again, it's about two communities that are around 100 miles apart, and they're each about 75 miles from Oaxaca Centro. If we go and visit Manuel in Miahuatlan, it's going to take us like 2 hours to get there. If we go to visit Sebastian, that's easily a half a day gone. Easily a
yes.
half a day. And so it's really hard for them to replace things that break. So you tend to work with things that don't break.
Yes, and This creates a very interesting flavor profile, at least for my mutant mouth. And well, you'll have to taste it. But these are the commonalities and the differences in the process. None of these spirits have any added water to them. Is that correct, Lou?
That is incorrect.
Oh, they have added water? Oh,
Well, they had water added before distillation. Yes,
well,
there's.
okay. Well,
You mean post
post
distillation?
distillation. Do they
That is
have?
correct. There is
Okay,
no water added post distillation.
thanks, Lou.
I'm checking you. I'm checking you, Chava.
Okay,
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 and you know what? And I do want to talk a little bit more about water in the this next round, this next flight of tasting the worlds apart.
great. Okay,
So
let's
let's
move on.
let's yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Enjoy what you're tasting. Take your time. We'll wait for you.
Okay, so are you recording?